Right, so afternoon, everybody. My name is Sharukh, Omar, engineering lead at Infinity. We are leading call tracking providers in the UK. You can go to infinity.co if you wish to find more about us. I'm going to be talking about extreme JavaScript minification. It's not a very Ember-like topic, but as developers, we are problem solving every single day. And we are problem solving under certain constraints. Could be time constraints, could be resource or product specifications or whatever. So to be able to actually problem solve within the constraints effectively and optimally, you may sometimes be forced to actually think outside the box. So that's a skill that is very important to have. And there are certain ways you can actually improve on the skill. And one way to do that is to actually present yourself a problem and then artificially inflate the constraints you're working within to force your brain to actually think outside the box. JS 1K, you might have heard of that, is one such challenge. So basically, you are supposed to write a JavaScript application in under 1K, which is 1024 bytes. You're not allowed to use any external includes like images or audio or CSS even. So if you need to print an image, you have to do it programmatically within the JavaScript. And you can't even modify the markup. So to give you a flavor of what that might involve, I did this entry many, many years ago for just 1K. I'm not going to, so there's a lot that's going on here, but I'm just going to pick the graphics and asset encoding to give you a flavor of how you need to think to be able to actually work within inflated constraints. So I'm going to just pick graphics and asset encoding for this talk. So the problem that I presented myself was to actually render one of these alien figures within the game, and the constraint was I had to do it under 50 bytes because there was so much else going on that I really couldn't afford anymore. So the trivial solution here would be to actually use base64 encoding, because you can put it in JavaScript as a string and spit it out into the DOM, and it would just render the image. 814 bytes, that's 80% of my constraints, so I can't do that. Next trivial solution was SVG, 377, no, doesn't work either. So bitmap, you divide the whole thing into grids, and then 0 for a black or 1 for a white, and basically just do the binary, and that kind of works. 77 bytes, so we're close. So I basically now the fun starts. So now you try to optimize that to see how far you can take it. So I figured out that the whole thing was fairly symmetric. So actually, I didn't need to encode the entire shape in binary. I could only do half the shape, and I can mirror it across the line of symmetry. That actually chops it down to about half. So from 77 bytes, I got down to 48 bytes. You might notice I've actually rotated it 90 degrees. That was going to come clearer in 2 slides' time. But that's because I wanted the 8-byte words for my rows. So further, we can optimize that by actually taking the 8-bit words and representing them in decimals. So that actually brings me down to 14 bytes. So that's well under my 50K target that I set for myself. So that's pretty good. So this is what I mean when I say you need to think outside the box sometimes. So I actually left it there for a very, very long time. And so one day it just struck me, actually, I could actually improve it even more. And that is because JavaScript has charcots. So there are certain numbers that represent or can be represented by certain characters. So each character has a code and vice versa. So I encoded all the numbers to their char representation. That actually boils it down the whole thing to just 6 bytes. And yeah, and that's actually, I was actually quite impressed by myself. But that's only half the story, because the compression is actually, yeah, you can have a really good compression. But the thing is, unless you can actually decompress and get the information back out, it's useless, because any savings you make on the compression side, you're going to lose that with a very complex decompressor. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the decompressor at the top is what I use for my simple binary bitmap, and the one at the bottom is my 6-byte, well, the one I use for my 6-byte compression. So I hope you can appreciate, actually, this is not that big. So it's about balancing out. So you have to, it's not a single-dimensional problem, it's a 2-dimensional problem, just makes your brain cells work extra hard. So I hope I've inspired some of you to actually set yourself problems and try to just force yourself to think outside the box and see if you can actually find a solution. It would come in handy during your normal life as a developer. I have blog posts on this in much more detail on my website, but thanks for listening to me. Thank you.